The scale house at Millbrook Elevator opened at 6 in the morning. By 5:45, there were already 11 trucks in line. Norma Schreier knew this because she had been watching the line for 3 weeks. Not from the road, from her own farmstead, half a mile west, where the roofline of the elevator's storage bins was visible above the tree line like the spine of something old and immovable. She could not count the trucks from that distance, but she could count them from the grain road at the end of her drive, where she walked every morning after the first pass through the hog pens, coffee in hand, before the sun was fully up. She had been making notes. Not complicated notes. Just the time, the approximate number of trucks visible, and the weather. 3 columns in a spiral notebook she'd bought at the drugstore in town, the kind with a red cover that cost 69 cents. October 1986. Corn harvest was running 2 weeks ahead of schedule across most of the western corn belt. A dry September had dropped field moisture faster than most farmers had planned for, and now the combines were running and the grain was ready, and every semi-truck in 4 counties was moving toward the same elevators at the same time. Millbrook Elevator was the only commercial grain buyer within 22 miles of Norma's farm. The next closest was at Sutter Junction, but the road there required crossing a bridge that had a posted weight limit, 12 tons, that ruled out a loaded semi. For most farmers in the area, Millbrook was not a choice. It was the only option. In the fall of 1986, corn was trading at approximately $1.52 a bushel. That number had not changed meaningfully in 3 months and was not expected to change meaningfully in the next 3. The elevator posted its basis daily on a chalkboard outside the scale house, the difference between the local cash price and the Chicago Board of Trade Futures price, and every farmer who pulled into that lot saw the same number. There was no negotiating it. There was no way to get more per bushel by arriving earlier or staying later. The price was fixed. What was not fixed was the weight. Norma was 57 years old. Her husband, Ray, had died of a heart attack in the spring of 1984, 3 months before what would have been their 30th anniversary, and 2 months before the operating loan came due on a farm they had built together over the previous 2 decades. She had handled the loan herself. She had handled everything since, with the help of her son when he could come down from Lincoln on weekends, and otherwise alone. The farm was 220 acres. Corn and soybeans rotated. She had no hired help. She had a 1974 John Deere combine she'd learned to operate herself in the fall of 1984 because there was no one else to operate it. She had 2 gravity wagons, both old, one older than her marriage, and a 1968 International tractor that started on the 3rd try in cold weather and the 1st try in warm weather, and had not given her serious trouble in 2 years. What she did not have was a semi-truck. Most of her neighbors used hired truckers to haul grain to the elevator during harvest. It was the standard arrangement in the area. A farmer filled a semi, the trucker hauled it to Millbrook, waited in line, dumped, and came back. In a normal harvest season, the wait at Millbrook averaged 45 minutes to an hour. The trucker charged by the load plus a mileage rate. The math worked because the wait time was absorbed into the cost of doing business. In the fall of 1986, the wait was not 45 minutes. The wait was 4 to 5 hours. 4 or 5 hours don't sound like much till you remember you only get maybe 11 good days the whole season. Every hour sitting in that line is an hour the combine's just sitting there doing nothing, and the rain don't care whose turn it is at the scale. Norma had learned this in the 2nd week of October, when her neighbor on the south side, a retired farmer who still put in 180 acres of corn every year out of what he called habit, had called to warn her that his trucker was quoting a 2-day backlog before he could get to her farm. 2 days of corn sitting in wagons while the market moved and the weather could change. She'd thanked him and hung up and walked out to the machine shed. Her gravity wagons held 250 bushels each. Her tractor could pull one at a time. The round trip to Millbrook, including loading and unloading time, was approximately 40 minutes in normal conditions, less than a mile each way on gravel, the scale house process itself taking 10 to 15 minutes when there was no line. She was not fast. The gravity wagon was not fast. A semi held 900 bushels. Her wagon held 250. She would need to make roughly 4 trips to equal one semi-load, but 4 trips at 40 minutes each, in no-line conditions, was still less time than one semi sitting in a 5-hour queue. The question was when there was no line. That was what the notebook was for. She had started watching the elevator in late September, before her own harvest began, when the first combines started running on the county's early planted fields. What she was looking for was pattern, not price pattern. She had no control over price, operational pattern, the rhythm of when trucks arrived, when they stacked up, when the line thinned. What she found, after 3 weeks of morning walks and evening notes, was this. The line was heaviest between 7 in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. That was when hired truckers worked, the professional window, the hours when equipment was running and crews were paid and momentum was high. The line dropped off sharply after 2. It dropped to near zero between 4 and 6 in the morning, in the window between when the last evening trucks finished and when the morning rush began. It also dropped during rain, not hard rain. The elevator stayed open in light rain, and so did most harvest operations. But the kind of October drizzle that made field conditions marginal, the kind that made truckers and farmers alike pause and reassess, that kind of weather cleared Millbrook's lot to 3 or 4 trucks, sometimes fewer. Norma did not have a hired trucker on the clock. She did not have a crew waiting to be paid. She had a tractor that ran in rain and a gravity wagon that did not care what time it was. On October 14th, she started her harvest at 3 in the afternoon and ran until 8 in the evening. She filled both wagons and left them staged at the edge of the field. At 4:15 the following morning, she hitched the first wagon to the tractor, drove to Millbrook in the dark, and pulled into a lot with 2 other trucks. She was on the scale at 4:22. She was back at the farm by 5:10. Second wagon by 5:40. Back by 6:30, before the line had rebuilt. She didn't increase her yield. She didn't get a better price. She just beat the line. What timing arbitrage does in a commodity market is narrow and specific. It does not change the underlying economics. It does not fix a bad price or compensate for a poor harvest. What it does is recover the hidden cost that most producers absorb without accounting for it. The cost of waiting. Most people watch the price and think that's the whole story. It's not. But sitting in that line for 2-3 hours, that cost don't show up on any paper, no receipt, nothing. It just quietly bleeds out of your margin while you're sitting there watching the clock. And at the end of the day, you wonder where it all went. In 1986, a hired trucker running from a farm near Millbrook was charging approximately $1.10 per loaded mile plus a waiting time surcharge of $35 per hour after the first hour. A 5-hour wait on a single load added $140 in trucker time to the cost of delivering 900 bushels. At $1.52 a bushel, $140 represented the gross value of 92 bushels. Every load that sat in line for 5 hours was, in effect, delivering 92 fewer bushels than its stated capacity, not because the grain wasn't there, but because the cost of waiting consumed the equivalent margin. Norma's gravity wagon held 250 bushels. Her tractor burned approximately $1.80 in diesel per round trip to Millbrook. Her total variable cost per delivery was under $3. She was not as fast as a semi. She was not as efficient per trip. But she was not waiting 5 hours, and she was not paying someone else to wait 5 hours on her behalf. Over the course of harvest, 22 days, beginning before dawn and ending after dark on the days when weather allowed, Norma made 61 trips to Millbrook. 44 of them were before 6 in the morning or after 2 in the afternoon. 14 were during rain windows when the lot held fewer than 4 trucks. Her average wait time, documented in the same red notebook, was 18 minutes. The harvest that year netted her $38,200 in grain revenue after delivery costs. Her neighbors, who use standard trucking arrangements, reported average wait times of 3 to 4 hours per load and trucker surcharges that, in several cases, ran higher than their equipment loan payments for the month. One neighbor, a man farming 340 acres 2 miles north, told her in November that he'd paid $1,800 in wait time surcharges alone across the harvest. He said it matter-of-factly, the way farmers report facts that hurt without changing anything. There was nothing to be done about it now. The grain was sold. The season was over. Norma didn't say much. There wasn't much to say that would have been useful. What she had done was not a secret strategy. It was not proprietary knowledge. Any farmer in the county could have watched the elevator lot and made the same notes. The information was available to everyone who looked. What she had was time, or more precisely, she had arranged her operation so that her time was flexible in a way that hired truckers' time was not. That flexibility had a value that did not appear on any invoice. It appeared in the notebook. Corn prices did not recover in 1987. The Farm Credit System, which had extended billions in operating loans to Midwest farmers in the early 1980s, reported its largest losses in its 60-year history that winter. Across Iowa, Nebraska, and Illinois, farm auction notices ran 2 and 3 pages in the weekly papers. Norma's operating loan came due in December. She paid it. She planted again in the spring. Before the 1987 harvest, she bought a second red notebook at the drugstore. Same kind, 69 cents. She dated the cover and put it on the shelf next to the first one, spine out, the way you'd shelve a book you might need to refer to again. October came. The elevator opened at 6. The trucks began lining up at 5:45. Norma was already on the scale.